What they don't know is, first of all, I'm Irish, right? So that's just an invitation, you know. Secondly, I'm 6'4" and 270 and have decades of martial arts training. Yeah. So if you want to kick my ass, just book an appointment, right? But anyway, I was really, there was a point there where I really considered shutting down the site just because of all the horrible stuff that I was getting.
That was Louis Cahill describing some of the darker days of G&G. I know I say this a lot, but I think this might be my favorite episode of all time. Gink and Gasoline today on the Wet Fly Swing Fly Fishing Show.
Welcome to the Wet Fly Swing Fly Fishing Show, where you discover tips, tricks, and tools from the leading names in fly fishing today.
Hey, how's it going today? Thanks for stopping by the Fly Fishing Show. I want to give you a quick shout out to our member-supported podcast group. If you head over to wetflyswing.com/members, you can support this podcast for a super low price, about the price of a cup of coffee. I want to thank you in advance if you've already had a chance to become a member. Louis Cahill, founder of Gink and Gasoline, goes deep into the history of how it all came to be about 10 years ago after sneaking into IFTD and connecting with Bruce Chard. We discover which podcast Louis and I have in common. Hint, Will Arnett is in it. Who Bojack Horseman is, and a little on his home water in Georgia. I could talk to Louis for hours today, so I hope you enjoy it. Before we get started, let's take a quick break for a word from our sponsors. Angler's Coffee roasts a full range of coffees with one goal in mind, delivering excellent coffee to every single angler. And I'm one of those anglers who's been loving Angler's Coffee, great tasting, robust, and good to go. They just released a new subscription program, and you can get 20% off this box and all products at anglerscoffee.com. Just use the coupon code WETFLYSWING at checkout to get 20% off of great coffee today. That's anglerscoffee.com. In today's world of mass-produced products, Stonefly Nets has reclaimed the tradition of handcrafted care with their custom wood landing nets. Stonefly's goal is to create a unique custom classic wood net that are second to none in quality and can be customized for that little extra touch. Please head over to wetflyswing.com/stonefly to get your custom net today. That's wetflyswing.com/stonefly to get started right now. Without further ado, here is Louis Cahill from ginkandgasoline.com. How's it going, Louis?
Good, man. How are you?
Good. Yeah, this is awesome. Thanks for, this has been kind of another one of those long time coming. I've been wanting to get you on here and chat about the whole Gink and Gasoline empire you have going there. But before we jump into all the background of the Gink and Gasoline, just tell me how you first got into fly fishing.
All right. First of all, you forgot evil. It's Evil Empire.
Oh, evil. There you go.
Nothing without the evil. I got into fly fishing when I was a kid. I was like 8 years old. And I fished as long as I can remember. Like when I was tiny, but I didn't even have a fishing rod. I just had a spool of fishing line and hooks, and I would sit out on the dock and just pan line stuff. My granddad had a lake house on a lake in Virginia called Smith Mountain Lake, which is it's a big posh thing now, but the house he built was one of the first houses up there. It was very modest, and it's a huge lake. Nobody was there, and I would sit on the dock and catch brim and stuff like that. And then one day, my grandfather was, I'm pretty sure, on the way to the trash can with an old bamboo rod that was just jacked up, and he must have seen me and said, "Here, you want this?" And I fished that rod. He took me out in the backyard with a dinner plate, and showed me basically how to cast and said, put the fly on the plate. Of course, I was lucky to put the fly on the yard, but I had that bamboo rod. It was an old 7-weight it was so jacked up that I didn't realize until I was an adult that the stripper guide was a paper clip that had been tied on with like kite string. And I fished that rod until I think I was in my 20s sometime when I backed over it with a car. And that was the end of that. I still have it, but I tried to fix it, but it's all jacked up. So anyway, that's how I got started.
That's it. Yeah. So the bamboo rod, and then so how do you go from basically that whole thing into, and then when does the Gink and Gasoline idea come to be?
Well, it's a little bit of an arc. So at that point, when I jacked up the old bamboo rod, and I went and looked at, oh well, let's get a new one. And of course, I had no idea what fly rods cost, and I was just poor as. How do we use adult language in your podcast?
Oh yeah. Use whatever you want.
I was poor as shit. I had no money, and so there was no fly rod in my immediate future. And so at the time, I had moved from small town of Virginia down to Atlanta, and I came down here and went to photography school. I was a newspaper photographer at the small town newspaper. I started out with a paper route and kind of worked my way up to being a photographer, but I wasn't very good at it, and I eventually ended up losing that job, which kind of stung a little bit. And so I managed to, fortunately, through some of my dad's VA benefits, paid for photography school for me. So I came to Atlanta with a friend, and we rented an apartment down here, went to photography school, and I got completely consumed by that. And when I got out of school, I took a job as an assistant working in a commercial photography studio, and I just slave labor. I worked literally 80 to 100 hours a week for $50 a day, and there were plenty of times I worked 36 hours straight without even going home,
Jeez.
and it was brutal. And I made no money, but I learned my craft, and then making a long story kind of short, after that, I went out and started my own business, started my own studio. And that, like all new businesses, struggled for a few years, and then it kind of took off and was successful. And that kept me pretty occupied up until the sort of the late 90s. And then business started slowing down, advertising business in general started slowing down, and I had more time on my hands. And so I still, the only fly rod I had was, this old broken bamboo that I'd put back together. And I had gotten into woodworking. I had an old Chris Craft boat that I was rebuilding. And that had sort of gotten me into buying some hand tools and getting into woodworking. Mm-hmm. And so I was at the hardware store, and I saw a sign for a class. So this fellow, who still one of my dear friends, Gary Lacey, who's a bamboo rod maker, was teaching a class and making a bamboo fly rod. And so I went in, and it was a really expensive class, and I probably could have afforded to do it, but I talked my way into doing some photos for the hardware store in exchange for taking this class. And that ended up being kind of a turning point in my life in a couple of ways, because I made this rod, which then once again got me back into fly fishing. And it also started me on this path of woodworking, which led to some other stuff. Some people know this, but not a lot of people, that I make custom guitars.
Oh, wow.
And so it kind of ended up going in that road too. That's my other life. But I started getting really obsessive about the fly fishing, and I've always been kind of a workaholic. My wife says that I'm really good at taking things I love and turning them into work, which she does not mean as a compliment. You're right.
Yeah.
But I'm kind of that way about something. I can't stand to do anything half-ass,
Yeah.
So I got really obsessed about the fly fishing, and I've got to learn how to do. I've got to, I remember, saying I really want to be a badass at this, just for no reason other than, I don't know, maybe it's self-loathing. If I do something halfway, I feel really bad about myself. So I started fishing an insane amount. I was fishing, I don't know, 150 to 200 days a year, just as a dude out on the stream. That's a lot of days. And, I kind of slowly learned what I was doing, and then I sort of backed into the business. I met a dude named Klewein. Kent was my original partner in Gink and Gasoline. He left a couple of years ago. Ken hasn't been around for a while, but he was a guide and a really talented angler, really technical, really good technical angler. And he and I met and started fishing together. And he had a website and a local, kind of blog, Southeast Fishing blog that, was created just to drive business to his guide service, but he got a lot of traffic and people dug it. And so I started taking pictures, carrying a camera and taking pictures while we were out fishing. And I put some on my website, just my commercial photography website, louiscahill.com. And it sat there. I didn't, do anything with it. I didn't promote it in any way. And they put a link on Moldy Chum with some of my photos. And all of a sudden it just exploded and people started fly fishing manufacturers and magazines started calling me to buy photos that were on my website, and nice. At that point I started getting a lot of traffic from people who just wanted to look at fishing pictures, and that website was not a great venue for that. It didn't really serve that need very well. So Kent and I were doing all this stuff and I was selling a bunch of pictures of him and he was using the photos on his website. So we had this idea to, let's just do something bigger. Let's work together and create a site that's more, nationally oriented. We'll take some trips. It's an excuse for us to take some trips to fish and do some stuff like that. And we're like, if we could do well enough at this to pay for us taking a couple of fishing trips a year, then we're stoked, right?
Yep.
So we started Gink and Gasoline, and we were so innocent. Just at the time, we had no idea, A, what we were doing, or B, who was going to care. We just started doing it. And at the time, I had started, because I was selling photos to manufacturers and stuff, I started going to IFTD, and I was super fortunate. My first year at IFTD, actually it was my second year. The first year I lied to get into IFTD.
Yeah.
I told them I was there covering it for a magazine, and the editor was a friend of mine and backed me up on it. And they let me in, and I just stalked. I didn't talk to anybody. I just looked to see what was going on. Then the second year I went back with a little portfolio of pictures, mm-hmm. And one of the first people I met at IFTD was Bruce Chard.
Oh yeah.
And Bruce and I just hit it off immediately. And Bruce is, to this day, is one of my best friends. Oh, and cool. And Bruce, I showed him my little book of pictures, and he got so stoked about it that, Bruce knows everybody in the industry. And he walked me around IFTD and introduced me to the marketing managers of every company, and to all the guides. And, just, it was an amazing opportunity that I had no idea at the time how much that was going to impact my life.
What year was that? What year was that you guys started it?
Gink and Gasoline officially launched in 2011.
Okay.
Now we worked towards that goal for probably a year and a half before that.
Yeah. So this is basically you're talking IFT. This is about 10, 11, 12 years ago.
So yeah, this would have been IFTD 2011. We walked in and the site had just launched, right? So IFTD was in August. The site launched July 4th, 2011. And so we printed some business cards and walked in and handed out business cards to, everybody at IFTD. Hey, check this out. This is not really thinking that we were promoting the site, but just going, hey, this is what we're doing, go check it out. And so it took us a while because we didn't know what we were doing. I built the original site, which is a skill I do not have. And we didn't have any analytics. We didn't have any way to track it. And so we finally hired a developer to install Google Analytics and to set up a newsletter where you could sign up for newsletter. And I remember when you sign up for the newsletter, we get a little email that says, so-and-so just signed up for your newsletter. And I remember the first person who signed up for my newsletter was Simon Gawesworth.
Oh, cool.
And I was like, wow, Simon is reading this,
Yeah.
that kind of was like, wow. Okay. And we got the Google Analytics up and we're a month and a half, 2 months in at this point. And there's 20,000 people a month looking at the site. Yeah. So that it scared the shit out of us because we thought this was just going to be, a casual thing. And we're like, holy shit. Now, not only are a lot of people reading this, but it's all people in the industry.
Oh, wow.
We knew that by the newsletter sign up. So we're like, we have to do a really good job of this, you know.
Yeah.
So I had taken a weekend workshop on how to run a successful blog, and they had said, well, if you really want the search engines and everything to pick it up, you have to post at least once a day for the first 30 days, right? So Kent is kind of the same work ethic that I am. So we decided, all right, well, if 30 days is good, 60 days is better. So we made this commitment that we're going to post every day for the first 60 days. And we did that. And it was about that time that we got the analytics up and saw what was happening. We're like, holy shit, now we can't stop. So we posted every day since then, just because, we were afraid not to for fear of looking like we weren't, holding up our end of the bargain. So nobody was more shocked than us that it took off and sort of, became a full-time job. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. So that I can just do the numbers really quickly. 10 years and every day is 3,650 blog posts. Is that kind of what you guys have going there? Because that's a shitload.
It kind of is. Yeah. So right now, during this whole thing with my eyes, and I guess we'll talk about that at some point. But the computer, seeing the computer is still very challenging for me. So when this all started, I had no idea how epic it was going to be. I thought I was going to have surgery and I would be out of play for a month or maybe 2, and then I'd be back in the game. I didn't realize that this was going to turn into at this point, 2.5-year ordeal. And so I called my developer up and I was like, kind of panicking because, I've got content through the next 2 weeks. I always kept about 2 weeks up there. And I was like, so he went through and set up some automated stuff on the site where it would go back and I could tag a post to be recycled and it would go through and it would automatically recycle that. Right. So that I put out an announcement on the site like, hey, I'm having surgery. I'm going to be out of play. This is what's going to happen. While we're at it, is that every day, an old classic post is going to recycle. And with 3,000 posts in the can, it's, man, it come up things that I don't even remember.
I know.
Cool. Right. Come up. So we started doing that. And what we found from the response to it was that people loved it, so I decided not to turn that off. Right. I went back through and I found all the posts that are kind of evergreen posts, the things that are about fishing techniques or experiential stuff, not product reviews or news related stuff, but things that will serve you well anytime you read them.
Yep.
And those automatically recycle and post every morning at 5 a.m. And I have not gotten back to where I'm able to post something every day, but I've been trying to once or twice a week post a new post over top of that.
Yeah.
And so that happens in the afternoon. So when I'm fully recovered and things are back to, where they should be, then there'll be 2 posts going live on the site every day, a classic in the morning and a fresh post in the afternoon. And in addition to that, we're ramping up the YouTube channel, put a lot more energy into that in the last couple of years. And I'm going to be putting more energy into that. And we're also starting a podcast as soon as I'm back on my feet, which I'm excited about. So all that'll be good because it's content that will be a little easier, I think, for me to produce with my new visual situation. And also people really dig it because although we have a lot of folks who read the site and read every word, there's a lot more people who watch a video or listen to a podcast than will take the time to sit down and read something. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, no, I love that you're starting a podcast and going in on that because I know obviously doing this since 2017 and, the work it takes. And there have been a few podcasts that have been really good podcasts in the fly fishing space that have kind of pod faded, right, is the word for it when you have it going and then, and a really good podcast. So, obviously, as well as anybody, fly fishing is not the easiest industry to make, if you're going to make a living out of it. Right. So it's, And I think that's the challenge that you got to really love it. And obviously you posting every day with Gink and Gasoline, I'm sure you're going to be super successful with the podcast as well, because it's the same sort of thing.
Thanks, man. I hope so. And there's going to be, so hosting it is going to be myself, and my buddy Dan Frazier. Do you know Dan?
No.
Dan he's a carp guy from up in South Dakota, but he's a brilliant angler. He's also a great trout fisherman, a great saltwater fisherman. But he's written a couple of books on carp fishing.
Oh yeah.
And he used to have a carp podcast and is known for that. And Justin Pickett, who is a Gink and Gasoline contributor and also handles all the social media stuff, will be on it too. So it'll be the three of us, and we'll have a guest from somewhere in the fly fishing universe, each time, and I think it'll be cool.
I like that. In fact, I was going to occasionally do a shout out to a new podcast I love, because I'm a self-proclaimed podcast addict. Not only do I help people get into it, have my own couple of podcasts and starting a third one, but I just love all the ones out there. And a new one I just listened to is Smartless. I was going to give a shout out. Yeah. So I can't remember who told. I think it was Peter from Cheeky. I think he mentioned, he's like, man, you got to check out Smartless. And I'll tell you what, those three guys, I'm addicted to it, because it's like these three guys, they're super successful, they're super funny, and I love the interaction. So if you guys, I'm sure, that interaction, you'll get a feel for it. But if it works anything like that, you guys are going to kill it.
Yeah, Smartless is one of my favorites. I will listen to anything with Will Arnett.
I know.
I'm a huge Bojack Horseman fan. Like, I don't know how many people. Are you aware of Bojack?
No,
So
I'm not.
It's a Netflix show, and it's an animated series, and he's a horse. Nice. Well, they all have human bodies, and then the heads of different animals.
Amazing.
So he's a horse, Bojack Horseman, and he was a TV star. He had a sitcom in the 80s. He's basically like Scott Bakula or not Scott Bakula. What's Scott Baio? Scott Baio.
Oh, Scott Baio, yeah.
Right. He's basically like, or who was the guy from Friends? He's that kind of character. But he's like a semi has been, kind of semi celebrity. Now I'm going to get hate mail from Scott Baio. Anyway, and he's just a burnout. He's an alcoholic. He's a clusterfuck, and he ruins everything he touches. It's very adult and very trippy. It's one of the best things I've ever seen on television. But Will Arnett is Bojack. So whenever I hear his voice, I see Bojack.
Oh, wow.
It's amazing. Those guys.
That's cool. That's cool. I'll put a link in the show notes out to that, and so hopefully I get a video or something. I love to put that in there when I can. So this is good. I'm excited for the podcast. When are you guys going to be launching this thing?
Well, it'll be soon. We've done most of the lead work. We have a producer. We've recorded some ads. We've recorded intros and stuff. We have a logo design. That Tyler Hackett from Wandering Blue Lines. Do you know him?
No.
I want to give a big shout out. If he is like my favorite fly fishing artist working right now. This guy's amazing. He's out in Salt Lake, and it's all woodcut. He does all woodcut art, and he just has a feel for fly fishing that just is, it's amazing. His stuff's so cool. So you can find him on Instagram at Wandering Blue Lines. His name's Tyler Hackett, and he's printed T-shirts and stuff for us in the past. I do a T-shirt for the Bonefish School, and he's designed that. And the podcast is going to be called Tales on Tales, and he's done a great, awesome logo for that. Mm-hmm. So the only thing we're waiting on right now is for me really to get back to at least 75% or so before. Well, the nice thing with the podcast is you don't have to. You could just record it, right? You can. You don't have to necessarily. Right. Yeah, that's the great thing, and have your team put together the whole thing. So okay, well, this is good. Obviously, I would love to talk podcasting for the next hour, but I wanted to bring it back to Gink and Gasoline and make sure. And I was just kind of thinking. You mentioned Kent. I know he's obviously his name's out there all over the place. What did he was there for quite a while, right? Like 8 years or whatever. Why did he end up leaving? Well. It was what you touched on already. It was the reality of trying to make a living in the fly fishing industry. Yeah. So Kent and I are in different places in our lives, right? He's younger than me, having kids and trying to raise a family and a whole different level of responsibility. Me, I'm kind of like, I've shut down a career already. And am on the track towards retirement. And I don't know, man. I've never been motivated by making money. That's never been the thing that's motivated me, and a lot of it to my detriment,
Mm-hmm.
And I'm super fortunate that my wife has a great corporate job, which has provided us healthcare benefits while I'm going through all this surgery and stuff. Because
All right.
that would have sank me.
Jeez.
So I'm super lucky for that. But I've never been motivated by making a lot of money. So I didn't get in this to make a lot of money, but Kent unfortunately was in a situation where he needed to make a living. Right.
Yeah.
And so he had an opportunity to take a great job that makes him a great income and supports his family and lets them enjoy a lifestyle that he was never going to see in fly fishing. And he hated it. It broke his heart. He was depressed as shit about it for the first couple of years, because I've never known anybody so passionate about fly fishing. But it was just a reality of he had to step up and do what he had to do.
Yeah, exactly. No, thanks for clarifying that. And I did want to touch on the guitars as well, but let's back to Gink and Gasoline. So, most of us, I think probably a lot of the people either have heard or read, what you have going there. But just describe it. What do you guys got going for somebody who's kind of a newbie who doesn't know anything about Gink and Gasoline? Describe what you guys do over there.
Sure, man. So the idea behind it was to be of service to the community, right? To be of service to the fly fishing community. And I hate saying this, but I think so many people that get into whether it's blogging or it's the social media or it's YouTube or whatever in fly fishing, do it because they want to be famous or they want to be,
Yeah.
Nothing makes the hair stand up on the back of my neck like calling me an influencer, right? That just galls me. Like
you are, right?
Like if you're influenced by me, you're making terrible fucking life choices, right?
Unless you want to start a super successful fly fishing blog.
Maybe. I don't know what that even means, but But the idea was we had all these guys that were coming and they wanted to look at fly fishing pictures, because originally I was just supposed to be the guy behind the camera, right? That was that was the whole original idea. And Kent was writing a lot of how-to and technical stuff. And we're like, well, this is a great combination. People love to look at the pictures. They love to learn about fly fishing. So, so we're going to put that out there. And, it didn't really go much past that other than, can we maybe sell some ads and make enough money to go fishing a couple times? But the first 3 years, we didn't even have ad space to sell. We did it without making a penny for the first 3 years. And so what we do is every day we post some content that is either instructional, like here's how you do this particular type of fishing, or it's experiential. It's about the greater context of fly fishing in our lives and what that means to us. Or it's something just entertaining or funny, but I've always said that I sell 5 minutes of fucking off at work, right? Yeah. Like if you're having a crappy day and you're into fly fishing, you can come to Gink and Gasoline and find something that's going to make your day a little better. That's the mission.
Yeah. That's it. And do you guys I know you have a lot of, obviously doing one post. That's amazing. First of all, right? Doing the 7 days a week, kind of a crazy, most people are kind of, 1 or 2 times a week, and that's a full deal. But so do you guys mix it up between super short stuff and super long? Do you have some really long form stuff as well?
We do. In fact, I think that's one of the things that's kind of unique about Gink and Gasoline is that there were a couple of rules that we broke right from the start. And you have to kind of have context that in 2011, when this started, fly fishing blogs were not what they are today. There were a couple of people out there doing things that were really cool.
And now let's take a quick break for a word from our sponsors. In today's world of mass-produced products, Stonefly Nets has reclaimed the tradition of handcrafted care with their custom wood landing nets. Stonefly starts the design process by selecting wood for the handle based on a number of key factors, including grain pattern and depth, but they don't stop there. This piece of art is accentuated by strips of hardwood that complement and accentuate the handcrafted handle. To be honest, I have never been a huge net guy, mainly because I didn't feel like my old collapsible net was easiest to use and was not easy on the eye, if you know what I mean. The Stonefly net not only looks beautiful, but has high-quality netting that is easy on the fish and will last for years to come. Stonefly's goal is to create a unique custom classic wood net that's second to none and can be customized for a little extra touch. For Ethan, the founder of Stonefly Nets, fly fishing has always had a traditional feel going back to fishing the 3-weight bamboo rod with his great-grandmother. When Ethan designs a custom net, it's his hope that others will create amazing lasting memories for years to come. Please head over to wetflyswing.com/stonefly to get your custom net now. That's wetflyswing.com/stonefly, STONEFLY, to get started right now. Okay, now let's get back to the show. Take us back. So when you guys started 2011, who were do you know, like, what, I mean, there was Moldy Chum, there was Midcurrent. Were there any others?
Midcurrent, obviously.
Yeah, were there others that were out there at the time?
Yeah, so Moldy Chum was there and Midcurrent was there. And they were the most, for lack of a better word, I will call them commercial sites that were out there. And then the people that I was really paying attention to, there's Aaron Block out in Colorado, had a site called Mysteries Internal, which I'm not sure if that's still live or not, but Aaron's moved on to more, let's say, serious writing at this point. Jason Tucker has the site Fontanellis Rising, which I love and am really fortunate to that Jason is a friend of mine, and he was in Michigan and then moved, of all things, to Georgia. And he and I knew each other online and then became good friends and actually fished together a lot. And he's a super talented writer. Matt Smythe had the Fishing Poet was up. And then there was this really quirky little site, which is one of the best things that ever happened on the internet, called Fish Beer. Do you remember the Fish Beer?
No.
Yeah, a guy named Matt Dunn, brilliant writer, but way out in left field. He would write these amazing fantasy pieces. Like, he wrote this story about the commemoration of the Nixon Presidential Library that had Spiro Agnew out snagging salmon in the river.
Nice.
And it was, I mean, his stuff was like, this guy had to be taking some kind of drugs. I don't know, but his writing was brilliant. And that's unfortunately gone. I think he became a beer brewer. Actually, it's what he does now, which is, I think, right on brand.
Yeah, it's a great field.
But that was a brilliant site. There's a guy named John Toby that had a site called Into the Light. I'm not sure if that's still active or not, but another brilliant writer that did some great stuff on fly fishing, both fiction and nonfiction. What else was there? Yeah, anyway, I mean, that's about it.
Yeah, that's about it. So why, now again, we're back to 10 years later. I mean, why have you stuck around? You know what I mean? All these other great ones are kind of faded away. What's kept you going?
I'm stubborn.
Yeah.
Because I'll tell you, it's been an arc. It's not been easy in a lot of ways. And I've learned some lessons, and if I was, it is a lot of work, right? Like, but I like to work. So that doesn't really bother me. I sat on a panel one time about fly fishing blogging, and Tim Romano, who runs Angling Trade, is also a good friend, was on that panel with me. And we were talking about that 7-day-a-week schedule. And he said, I don't know how he does it. Actually, that's wrong. I know exactly how he does it, and I want no part of it. And Tim's one of the hardest working people I know. So I took that as a real compliment.
Yeah.
But a lot of it has just been my stubbornness. But over the years, the work has not bothered me. What has been challenging, if I was doing it again, I would not use my name.
No kidding.
And at the time we did that, Kent and I consciously made that decision, not because we wanted people to know who we were, but for us, because it was accountability. Like, we stood behind. That was our point, was we wanted to stand behind everything that we put online.
Yeah.
So we signed it. We put our names on it.
And what
And
do you mean by putting your names on it?
it's, Louis Cahill and Kent Klewein, they're on the site.
Yeah, because Gink and Gasoline, I mean, I think your name is synonymous with Gink and Gasoline, but most people say Gink and Gasoline, right? But I guess I see what you're saying.
Yeah,
so you guys,
that's
wrote
right.
all the blog posts, your contents there. People, when they go to the site, they know it was you two, as opposed to some whatever else way you could do it.
Yeah, exactly. So what happened was, here's the thing. We have about 2.5 million people a year read the site, right? Those numbers are a little old because I haven't looked at it recently, but that's about where we are. And of those people, the vast majority of them are awesome human beings, right? Who you never hear from.
Yeah.
Right? But the 5% or whatever, who are trolls and assholes, you hear from those guys constantly.
Right.
So I would get emails, and I would get what really became a problem with social media. I had to shut down my Facebook account, started another one, and then eventually had to walk away from that. I had to quit Facebook altogether.
No kidding.
Oh yeah, and I got death threats for writing about catch and release practices for steelhead. Right. I wrote a post about don't beach steelhead and let them bang their head on the rocks. Go out where you're in knee deep water and tail the fish and, land it like a human being, And if you can't land a fish in knee deep water, you don't deserve that fish. That's my opinion. Right. It's not that damn hard, but I had a guy from BC, who sent me an email and said, if you ever show up in Torrance, I'm going to kill you. I'm like, hang on, let me book a flight.
Right.
Because I get all these emails from these, of course, anonymous people, right?
Yeah.
Telling me all the terrible things they're going to do to me. And what they don't know is, first of all, I'm Irish, right? So that's just an invitation, Secondly, I'm 6'4" and 270 and have decades of martial arts training.
Really?
Yeah. So if you want to kick my ass, just book an appointment, right? But anyway, there was a point there where I really considered shutting down the site just because of all the horrible stuff that I was getting,
And when was that? Was that kind of midway through?
It really came to a head. It was, I can't remember if it was which election cycle it was in.
Oh, right. Yeah. But one of those crazy.
Here's the thing. I made a decision and am committed to it and have stuck to it for the entire history of the site, that there is no politics on Gink and Gasoline.
Oh, really? No, that's not an easy thing to do.
It is not an easy thing to do, but we do not get into politics. The closest we get is we will publish
conservation.
We'll publish conservation stuff.
Yeah, which also shouldn't be political, but it is.
Mm-hmm. Exactly, right? And if it is political, it should be conservatives who are in favor of it, conservation, you would think, but that's not the way it turns out.
No.
Anyway, we will publish particularly news stuff about, hey, this particular fight over this particular watershed's going on. Here are the issues. And we try to be very even-handed and fair about it. And we approach it from a standpoint of, this is what fly fishers or hunters or outdoorsmen should be interested in about this issue, right? It's not, this is what you should be interested in if you're a liberal or a conservative or whatever, right? Now, my personal political views, I'm sort of an equal opportunity guy. I think stuff that will piss everybody off, right? Because I am essentially a centrist, right? I'm not in love with either political party that we have choices over right now, right? But I vote primarily based on two things, which are conservation and morality, right? Like, I'm very interested in the economy doing well. That plays into my future, but not at the expense that someone else has to suffer for it. All right. No. So I'm kind of a middle of the road guy, right? But and again, I keep that out of the site. However, on my personal Facebook page, that's Louis Cahill's Facebook page, not
yeah.
the Gink and Gasoline Facebook page. But on Louis Cahill's Facebook page, I feel like I can post whatever I like, right? And here's how I feel about that. And this is why I quit Facebook.
Did you quit the Louis Cahill Facebook, everything, or just Gink and Gasoline?
No, just the Louis Cahill, and
Okay.
and it is still there. My Facebook page is there, and Justin will occasionally post stuff on it, but I don't go there. I don't look at it,
Yeah.
and he runs Gink and Gasoline. I walked away from Facebook completely several years ago, and it was the best choice I ever made because I was getting hate mail from dudes in the industry you would know. I'm not going to mention their names.
Yeah.
But would get drunk and write me, just attack me with 1,000-word Facebook messages, right?
Damn.
And here's the way I feel about social media is that if I have a page, whether it's Instagram or it's Facebook or it's whatever, right? If I have a page and I post something, that's my prerogative, right? If you disagree with me, it is your prerogative not to follow me. It is your prerogative to walk away, to do whatever you want. But it is not your right to call me an asshole on my own page.
Yeah, on
right?
your page.
You don't get to do that, right? It's bar rules, right? You don't say anything to me on Facebook you wouldn't say to my face. Don't hide behind your anonymity, right? Don't hide behind the 1,000 miles difference between us. If you want to say something to me, man up and say it, right?
Yeah.
And so Facebook obviously does not work that way. And because I thought that anybody who sent me a friend request, if they were holding a fish in their profile picture, I would approve it, right? Which was foolish. So I attracted a lot of people who just, were there to, be haters and trolls and whatnot. And it made my life really miserable for a while. And I already thought I was pretty thick skinned, but I had to learn to develop an even thicker skin. But I will say this to anybody who is listening right now: quit Facebook. You will be so happy. It will make your life so much better. You'll thank me for it, because my life has been 100 times better.
And the one thing I like about Facebook is the like the group part of it, right? Having a place for your community to kind of go chat. But you have to monitor that, of course. How do you, how does your community on Gink Gasoline, is it all through the website, or do you have a place where people can kind of go and chat with each other?
Yeah, we have a bunch of social media channels. We have a Facebook page, we have Instagram, we have a Twitter. And I think these days the most active, and this is, I don't think about us, but just about the platforms, the most active is Instagram. So I find that on the Instagram posts, we'll post a picture from the Daily Post and a little excerpt or something about it. And there's always some dialogue in the comments section on the site, but there's a lot of dialogue in those Instagram posts, which is kind of nice, because it's a more immediate thing. The frustrating thing about the comments section is I have to approve every comment. I even have to approve my own comments.
Oh, right.
Right. And particularly with me struggling with the computer lately, it frequently takes me a few days to get around to approving comments. And so people, somebody's posted the same comment 3 times because they think that something's not working, or, and I hate that there's that delay, but where we are right now, there's nothing I can do about it. But Instagram is more immediate. People can post a comment there and they get into discussions, between themselves. And so that's nice.
Yeah. And Instagram is great. I was going to touch on, I'm not sure if you've heard of the new Clubhouse app. It's this new social media app that's kind of blowing up and doubling in size. But,
not.
Yeah, it's kind of brand new. It's actually only by invite only. They're doing this whole launch thing, but we're on it, and we've got a little fly fishing community we're building. I got a couple other podcasters that I'm working with there, and it's super tiny now. There's like literally we're one of the only fly fishing clubs on there, but it's really cool because it's essentially kind of like a podcast where right now we could be on Clubhouse, and there could be people all around the world that could just jump in, and they could be in the audience listening, and then they could raise their hand, and we could bring them up on stage to answer a question. For you, we could say, hey, we got Louis on here. Okay, Jim's down here. Let's bring him up on stage, and he can ask a question. Then Jim will come on and ask a question. And the cool thing is that they're doing a good job at monitoring it, and things like keeping the trolls out of it. And trolls do happen,
nice.
Obviously. So anyway, so we're working on that. But it kind of brought me up because Roger, who has asked about fly fishing, he's moderating with me. And he talked about how he did a show with Bucky. The Fly Fishing Collaborative out there. He does God, what is it? Bucky Buckstabber has, he basically, it's like child, the abuse that's going on through all the child trafficking, right? He brought somebody up on his show, which Roger doesn't typically do. He's usually more instructional, but man, he got hate mail, right? People were like, "What are you doing?" And like super hate mail from bringing this guy who was,
yeah,
you know what I mean? This is a positive thing. This is like Bucky's doing this great thing to take kids out of the trafficking. Anyways, the point is that I think Roger reached out to a couple of those people, and once he did, those people were like, "Oh yeah, no, I was way off." So I think, with you, I mean, obviously, if 5% of 3 million is 150,000 people, that would be a lot. You know what I mean? But still, I mean, the majority of those people, I'm sure, it's such a small percentage of, like, you're hearing the loud people, but I'll bet you 90% of them are probably pretty positive, right? Do you think that's the case?
I know that's the case.
Yeah.
And I know that because I'll tell you, with this stuff going on with my eyes, I have gotten such an outpouring of support from the community in every way that it's just been amazing to have that many people sincerely care about you is a great thing. And I meet people when I'm out, like I'll be, I mean, lots of places somebody will recognize me and come over and say hi and we'll talk. And I love that. And what has become my absolute favorite part of my job is hosting trips. I do the Bonefish School in the Bahamas, and I do a steelhead trip out there to the Deschutes, and we do some stuff in Argentina, and we're going to start doing some more domestic trips here soon. But the thing that's cool about that is that it gives me the chance to actually connect one-on-one and to get to know and become friends with these people who have been following the site and have had this, where we've had this kind of one-way relationship, for years by the time they show up on a hosted trip usually. And then I get to really interact and fish with those people and help them out directly. And that's what I enjoy, that kind of connection with people. And the thing that's been cool about it is that, and since we touched on the subject of politics, I've got guys all over the political spectrum that come on these trips, and it's never a problem. They're just such a cool group, and everybody's so happy to be there and about fishing. And it's like, especially when you go to a lodge, like, I don't know if you've done any lodge fishing, but it can be a real mixed bag. Like, you can show up at a lodge and there'd be one guy that ruins the trip for everybody, Yeah. And we do not have that problem on these trips. It's amazing. So
that's cool.
That's something that I really enjoy. And it does reinforce for me, along with the emails that I get and the comments and the folks that come up and say hi and stuff. It really does reinforce for me that the vast majority of the people who are out there reading the site are good people with big hearts who just really care about fly fishing, And that's faith affirming for me. And I'm really, really happy that when I went through that bad patch that I didn't just quit. Because I never would have gotten over that hump and gotten to that point.
That's cool. Yeah, no, and just to wrap this thing up, I you hear about the Drake forum as well, right? As being one of those kind of crazy.
Yes.
I don't even know. I mean, but you hear these kind of crazy things about it. So, I mean, obviously there are places that there's some stuff going on. But hey, I want to take it to nymphing. We're kind of getting into nymph fishing, a new season, and we're breaking this out. And maybe we could just use this as an example. When you think of Gink and Gasoline, if somebody was maybe kind of new to nymph fishing, maybe even fly fishing, and they're trying to learn about it, when they come to your site, what would you tell them? How do they find the best tools and resources and blog posts there?
Well, honestly, the easiest way, if you wanted to do something like that, there's a couple of ways you could approach it. You could come to the site and you could look at the categories, and you could select the trout fishing category or the how to fly fish category. And there will be a ton of posts in there. And by a ton, I mean hundreds of posts in there about different nymph fishing techniques, everything from fly tying to, fly to selection to different, styles of nymph fishing. And, there's tons of content there. Another way you could, if you just wanted to be really targeted about it, is you could use the search feature, and you could search for nymph or nymphing on that. Or you can even just go to Google, and if you type in Gink and anything you can think of, you will find the Gink and Gasoline article about it. Right?
So perfect.
So that's a great way to do it too. You can really target stuff like that. There's definitely a ton of content on
Gotcha.
there because, I'm from the Southeast. I live in Atlanta, Georgia. Um, and we do not have the kind of prolific and predictable hatches in this part of the country that you do a lot of other places where there's trout fishing. We have good trout fishing here, but it's a little more challenging in that way. I remember the first time I went out and fished with my buddy Zach Dalton from Sage on the South Fork, and we there was two boats. There was like six of us, and we rode down river to this little riffle. I pull over and like, oh, it's just this beautiful, juicy riffle that pours off into this deep hole, and I'm like, hell yes, I'm ready to go. And everybody sits down and starts opening beers and pulling out the lawn chairs and stuff. I'm like, what are you guys doing? And they're like, oh, we're waiting for the hatch. And I'm like, are you your fucking mind?
Yeah.
You're going to sit on the bank and wait for a hatch? If you did that in Georgia, you'd be there months later.
No kidding.
So, yeah. So, if you're serious about trout fishing down here, you will get opportunities to fish dry flies. It will happen. But if you're going to fish, consistently, your nymphing game needs to be down,
Yeah.
So that's something we've covered a lot of content, and it's like, everybody's got an opinion. Some people hate nymph fishing, don't think it's fly fishing, whatever.
Yeah.
I don't care what you think about it. If you want to catch fish, it's one of the most consistent ways to do it.
Is.
And it is definitely is an art, definitely requires a lot of skill. So we've covered it pretty extensively, along with everything else we can. Well, I was just gonna say, one of the things that bothers me about anytime people talk about fly fishing, whether it's in an article or it's in a video or it's in a podcast or just around a table, people have blinders on. People say fly fishing, and what they mean is the specific type of fly fishing they do, right? So one of the things we decided early on was we wanted to try to cover every aspect of the sport, right? And since, like I said earlier, I was supposed to be the guy behind the camera, right? And Kent was writing the content, but we needed, we had a lot of great trout content, a lot of great bass content, but we really needed and wanted saltwater content, right? So I just took that on, like kind of intentionally, because Bruce and I were buddies and he was inviting me down to fish with him a bunch. I was like, all right, I'm going to learn saltwater and I'm going to be the saltwater guy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that started. And so I'll get into, if I'm writing something like, let's say I write an article about tying leaders, right? And I talk about selecting leader material. And I say, fluorocarbon is softer than hard mono. So I use hard mono in the butt section, the bulk of my saltwater leader to turn over a fly. And then I use fluorocarbon tippet for the abrasion resistance, and the softness of that tippet to disperse the energy when it lands. And then, and this is an example of me doing something stupid, right? And then, of course, I get lit up in the comments section from trout guys who are like, "Oh, that's bullshit. Monofilament is, softer than fluorocarbon." Well, that's true. Monofilament is softer than fluorocarbon once it's saturated with water. But if you're saltwater fly fishing, your leader doesn't stay in the water long enough to become saturated. So the mono is always harder than the fluorocarbon. If you're trout fishing and your leader's in the water constantly, then that monofilament has a chance to absorb water and it becomes softer. So that's an example of me being myopic and talking about something in the context of the kind of fly fishing that I'm doing that ignores other aspects of the sport. So we try really to take a very holistic kind of attitude about it. And when we write something about, capital F fly fishing, that it's something that translates across any manner of fly fishing you might do.
Yeah. And that's a great example of just in the comments. I mean, I think that's a good way it starts the discussion, right? You have a good topic, but there's a lot of ways you could respond as a listener out there or somebody on your blog, right? You could come like that. You could be like, what the fuck? This is, you're fucked up. Or you could be like, well, I don't know. You know what I mean? There's ways you can disagree, but be kind of reasonable about it. You know what I mean? Like, do you see out there? I mean, obviously, again, it's a small chunk of people, but probably most people are probably, if they disagree, they're fairly stable and not out of control.
these days it's much better. We
Yeah.
every once in a while you get somebody who lights up and is,
Yeah.
inappropriate about it. But for the most part, yeah, they're pretty good. But everybody has an opinion. I was out one time, I was getting ready for a steelhead trip, and because we don't, do a lot of spay fishing around here, I always like to go out and practice my casting, before I go on a trip. And so I'm out at the river. I don't even have a fly on. I'm just casting my spay rod, getting tuned up before my trip. And I button up and I start walking out. And there's a woman who's got her dogs out there running around on the river, and she's sitting on a tree. And she says, "Are you some kind of fly fishing expert?" Or she said, "Are you some kind of expert?" That's what she asked me. I said, "Ma'am, this is fly fishing. We're all experts." And I think that when you start, online in the fly fishing, you find out really quickly everybody's an expert.
And now let's take a quick break for a word from our sponsor. With more than 40 years of experience in coffee, the Anglers Coffee team roasts a full range of coffees with one goal in mind, delivering excellent coffee to every single angler. That's why they've released a brand new coffee subscription program made just for you. Just visit anglerscoffee.com, provide your coffee preferences, your mailing address, and how much coffee you drink in a week, and they'll take care of the rest. There's no obligations or hidden fees, just great coffee delivered to your front door. And I'm all signed up for the subscription package. It's super easy and convenient. I don't have to do anything, and I just get a bag of coffee delivered to my door. I wanted you to check out, I just had an interview with Joe as well, the founder of Anglers Coffee, and he digs in deep on the background of the coffee, the quality, and everything. So check out that episode with the founder. I love Anglers Coffee. I love what they're doing. They are just a great company, and I feel proud to be able to share them with you. So join me in supporting a great company who supports fly fishing, conservation, and great coffee. As part of Anglers Conservation Alliance, Anglers Coffee donates a portion of every sale to help conserve and protect our wild natural habitats and fish species. Right now, they're raising money for Soul River, which brings veterans and inner city youth out into the river to teach conservation, fishing skills, and more. Right now, you can get 20% off your first subscription box or gift box. Simply use the code WETFLYSWING at checkout. Just visit anglerscoffee.com and get 20% off your first subscription or gift box using WetFlySwing at checkout. That's anglerscoffee.com. Okay, now let's get back to the show. So back to the nymphing. So, I think, that makes sense. And what is your home river? If you had to say, what's the river you consider your home river? Or if you can, without telling any secrets or whatever.
Yeah, Spot Burn. No, it's not a secret. I guess so first of all, I don't get to do nearly as much fly fishing in Georgia as I would like. And that is something that I intend to change in the coming year when I'm back on my feet. Before the eye surgery, before all that started, I was taking some kind of major trip to fish at once a month. I was gone about 2 weeks of every month. Now, of course, that schedule came to a grinding halt. So that'll be recalibrated. But one of the things I want to do is travel less and fish locally more. I will tell you a stream. It's not a secret by any stretch of the imagination, but it is my favorite stream in Georgia, and it's where I really dialed in my small stream trout fishing. It's called Nuntutla Creek. And there's some fairly well-known private water up there, but there's a beautiful stretch of that stream that flows through the Blue Ridge Wildlife Management Area. That's all wild fish, and it's just stunning. It's just a beautiful place, and it's not easy. You really have to be on your game to catch fish there. But I love the place. It's one of my favorite places to go and just spend time. So if I had to call a home water, that'd be it.
That's it. How do you spell that?
Noontootla. Nuntutla, just like it sounds.
That's cool. Yeah, exactly. Nuntutla. Okay.
That's how we talk down here. So I don't know if you know about the Chattahoochee River, which I live just right by the river. It's also a famous trout fishery, tailwater fishery. And a lot of people will not be aware that we were for decades in this huge water fight with folks down in Florida, because that river eventually feeds the Apalachicola area. And is that fresh water coming from the river is hugely important to the oyster,
Right.
oyster fishing down there, right? So Florida was suing us for decades, and there was always in the course. And this was during the time when George W. Bush was in the White House, and nothing negative to say about W, but we all know he sometimes had some unique pronunciations.
Yeah, he did.
Words, right? It was always fun to listen to him talk. And the court case for this was called the Apalachicola-Tallapoosa Basin case.
Oh my
right?
gosh!
And I remember at one point he had to get up and make a speech about it. And I made popcorn and sat in front of the TV. Like, I cannot wait to hear him say Apalachicola-Tallapoosa. Wow. And he never did. It was clear
really?
that they had intentionally written it out of the speech. He never made an attempt to say it.
That's perfect. That's perfect. Yeah, I love that. I look back at the George W. days. I'm like, man, those now look kind of like a positive, a real, like, thinking back of some of the political mess we've been in. You know what I mean? As far as just the craziness. I mean, I think back to W. It's like, wow, that was actually kind of I guess you had a war. That was kind of crazy, but just as far as the political, just as far as the political, like, we have a process in politics. We go through you know what I mean? Like that seems like a different era, but so it
was a simpler time.
Yeah, it was a simpler time. Exactly. Maybe we'll just, we have a little segment. I always joke around, call it the rapid fire round, but let's start off as we kind of wrap it out of here in the 222, which is top 2 tips, top 2 flies, top 2 resources. And you mentioned the Noon Tutela. Maybe we can just bring it there. So you do some nymph fishing there?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Let's just start there. In this, if you take us to the river and think about, kind of 2 flies. If you had to go there nymph fishing, what are your top 2 choices? Whether it's today or just kind of the peak time.
Yeah, it's easy. It's not technical. So a yellow stimulator and about a size 8. For a little wild fish out there is always a good choice, especially when the stonefly hatches are coming off. And again, it's not fancy, but it's hard to go wrong with a hare's ear, and maybe a size 14 or so in that stream is really effective.
Just a standard hare's ear, gold ribbed hare's ear.
Yep.
On your site, do you guys cover a lot of, do you get into fly tying? I'm not even sure, like on the TV channel that you guys have going with YouTube and all that, is that something where what do you cover in there? Do you do fly tying?
There is a lot of fly tying on there. And, and from a lot of different folks too. We've had, I've done a bunch of tying videos on there. And Justin has done some tying videos, and Kent did some fly tying videos. But then for quite a while, we had Bob Reese. Do you know Bob from Cheyenne, Wyoming?
Thin Air Bob Reese? Yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah.
Well, who's he with?
He's his company is called Thin Air Angler.
Oh, okay.
And you can find him on Instagram at Thin Air Angler. And he's a guide and a fly tyer out there. And for a while, he was doing once a week for a couple of years. He was doing a fly tying video for us, and you can find those on the site, and they're just awesome. And also Herman DeGala out in Colorado has done some great Stillwater fly tying videos for it. And Jeff Hickman out there where you are has done some great steelhead stuff. And my good buddy Andrew Grillos, who I'm gonna plug. I don't know if you are aware about Andrew's situation.
No, this is amazing. You know what's amazing about this, Louis, is that you're throwing out a lot of names. And I've interviewed. We have over 200 episodes, but you're throwing out a bunch of names that I don't know of. So this is exciting. I think I'm gonna have to connect with some of these people.
You should be checking these people out. And Andrew's going to be on our podcast pretty quickly. But if you know flies like the Hippie Stomper or the Bob Gnarly, or
nice.
He's tied some of the most kick-ass fly patterns out there. And Andrew's just one of the most big-hearted people that I know. And he's a brilliant guy. He's a mechanical engineer. His job, he designs instruments that study subatomic particle movement. Which, like, I can barely say that sentence.
Yeah.
Much less tell you what it means. But about a month ago or 2 months ago now, I guess, he suffered a major stroke. And he's a young, healthy dude. He ran a 100-mile marathon 2 weeks before the stroke hit.
Jeez.
And he had several brain surgeries and was back to the level of learning to talk and walk and tie his shoes again, Yeah. And one of the best fly tyers alive. And he's been posting on Instagram a ton lately. He started back tying, and because he just couldn't physically do it, he started tying San Juan worms.
Yeah.
And he's been just a guy who's known as a big fly tyer. He's posting every day pictures of his worm flies because he's so excited to be back sitting at the vise.
Wow.
And anyway, there's if you're interested, if you know Andrew, if you know of his flies and you're interested in helping, there's a great GoFundMe page.
Oh, perfect.
For him right now that's helping, has raised about $150,000.
Amazing.
To cover some of his medical bills, which are incredibly extensive, and of course he's not able to work. And but great dude and something worth.
Cool.
So anyway, sorry I digressed.
Yeah. No, it's good. I'll put a link into the show notes out to that and get the word out for sure on the GoFundMe site. That's awesome. Cool. Yeah, this is always, Louis, it's awesome when I get people, like yourself on here that, there's so much, we could chat about here that, and in fact, I talked to my buddy, Greg Keenan over at the Fly Fishing Insider. I think you were on his podcast a while back, and he said, Yeah, and Greg said that, I think he said your podcast is still one of his most listened to. So, you know what I mean? Like, you definitely resonate with
really?
Yeah. He just mentioned that last week. I told him you were coming on. He's like, yeah, man, I think it's still number one. So it just shows you, you got a good following out there, which is cool. So yeah, just quickly, again, I've gone off track, which I do, but G&G TV, just quickly describe, tell us about that. Is it what do we need to know about that?
Well, it's the first thing you need to know about it is it's kind of unfortunately half baked at this point, right?
Yeah.
So we started off a couple of years ago. I decided, all right, we got to get serious about YouTube, because when YouTube is a different thing today than it was when we started off. And so I had a bunch of videos on YouTube, but I used them just to populate on the site. So they weren't even public on YouTube, because YouTube was not to us. We were like, our advertisers are supporting us, their ads are on the site. We need to draw people to the site, to support them. Right. So we weren't trying to, drive people to YouTube. Well, now YouTube is the second largest search engine on the planet. So it's requires a different approach. So we started putting a lot more, and it's mostly instructional stuff, although there are some like travel pieces and stuff on there. There's one I'm particularly proud of is the golden trout in the Wind River video was a whole lot of fun and is super cool. But anyway, so we started really ramping up the video production, and putting those things out and making it more public. And then the idea was that there's this half-done redesign of Gink and Gasoline. Like we were halfway through it when my eye collapsed.
Oh, right.
So so it just got kind of put on hold. And the idea was that there'd be this whole page on Gink and Gasoline of Gink and Gasoline TV, where those sites that were on YouTube will populate onto the site, and we had an interface there that you could go through them and watch them. But at this point, in the interim, YouTube has changed so much that I now don't know that that's going to be a major part of the site. That G&G TV is probably just going to live on YouTube. I mean, it'll be on the site, but it certainly is getting more traffic on YouTube, and it's crazy because we have advertising on YouTube, but I don't actually get paid for it, because when we set it up, long story, I got a buddy who shoots video for me who set up the YouTube account and just used his information, his address. And then he had a really ugly divorce and moved and sold the house. And so in order for you to get a check from YouTube, they have to send you a piece of mail to your address confirming that that's where the checks need to go to. And there's no way to change that address on the YouTube interface. So they send it to my buddy's old house where he doesn't even live anymore. So YouTube owes me a ton of money that I have no way to collect.
No way. Oh my God.
Again, not motivated enough by money. Yeah.
No, I hear you. Okay, cool. So that gives a little sip. Let's get back to the 222. So we had the two flies, and then what about a couple of tips? And let's maybe just keep it if we can think nymphing. What would be a couple of tips out there if you had for, or I guess maybe just for that river? What would you tell somebody if it was their first time out there?
Well, I'll give you one tip, which is it's a good general tip that'll work anywhere you fish, and that is that no matter what kind of fishing you're doing, even if you're fishing nymphs right off your rod tip, casting matters, right? And this is, I think that as a community or as an industry, I should say, the fly fishing industry has done a really good job of telling people who are new to the sport, you don't have to be a great caster to get out and catch fish. Get out there and start fishing, right?
That's right.
And we've done such a good job of that we have, to an extent, done a disservice to the community by not emphasizing how important it is to actually learn some good casting technique. So my first nymphing technique or tip would be, don't drop your rod tip. Because if when you're presenting the fly, you drop your rod tip, what happens is you drop your line on the water, and let's say you're fishing the far seam on the other side of the current, and you drop that rod on the water, you're already screwed as far as getting a good drift, right? Because the water's going to instantly start dragging that fly line. Your fly is not going to sink. It's not going to move naturally, right? But if you stop that rod tip high and hard, and actually make a loop with the cast, then you can drop just the fly and you can high stick and keep all that line off the water, and you'll get a much more natural drift and you'll catch a lot more fish, right?
Perfect.
And the other tip I will tell you that anybody who has fly fished for any amount of time knows is that dialing in your weight when nymphing is hugely important, right? Dialing in the amount of weight you're using and where you're using it. So typically when I'm nymph fishing, I always fish a 2-fly rig unless there's regulations that say you can't, right? I'll fish 2 flies, and I will weight those flies according to how I want that team to sink, right? And generally speaking, I find that you need more weight than you think, and I'll put that first weight, the heavy weight, 12 to 16 inches above the lead fly, and like I'll use, it just depends on what water you fish, how fast it is, how deep it is. But if you're questioning, should I put on 1 split shot or 2? Put on 2. And if you're hanging up on the bottom all the time, take 1 off, But then the other thing that people don't think about a lot of times is that, sometimes like on that trailing fly, I will, I'll fish a bead head or something that has a little bit more sink to it. But frequently you get a better presentation if you use a weightless fly and you put a real small split shot between the 2 flies.
Oh, nice.
You'll get better action on the overall rig. So again, it depends on the water you're fishing, but I would say really study dialing in your weight and figuring out how much weight you need for different water conditions and where that weight needs to be to get the best presentation of those flies.
Perfect. All right, great. Those are good tips. And then as far as resources, other than what you guys have going, where would you direct somebody, or as far as nymphing or kind of some resources for nymph fishing?
Devin Olson has a great series on Euro nymphing, which I'm not a big Euro nympher. Like I'll do it sometimes. Justin is much more into that than I am. My nymph fishing, I tend to be kind of a hybrid sort of guy. Like I fish a lot like Euro nymphers fish, but I use the little New Zealand wool strike indicators, which I've tried everything, but that's my favorite. I'll use a real small one of those. And I like them because they'll actually sink, so they don't mess with your drift as much, but you can still see them. And for me, especially at this point in my life, man, being able to see that thing is huge, right? But I tend to high stick and work the drift much like a Euro nympher would. But Devin's got some. I can't. The thing is, I can't remember right now what the name of it is, but he's got a video series.
Yeah, no, we've talked about that before. Him and Gilbert Gilbert and the crew. Yeah, I'll put a link out to that. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
But his site, yes, Tactical Fly Fisher. You can go to
Yeah.
Tactical Fly Fisher and find it. Great resource. The other thing I will say is that's pretty in depth and like dead nuts technical, right? If you're more of a beginner and you're trying to, really just figure out the basics, I don't think anybody does a better job than Tom Rosenbauer.
Yeah.
At
He's awesome.
really educating beginners. So you can
Yep.
go on the Orvis site and you can find some of Tom's videos, and they're on YouTube as well. And Tom just does a phenomenal job with that.
Yep. Yeah, totally. Tom's awesome. Okay, well, let's keep this rapid fire going here, and so a couple of quick ones before we get out of here. So, obviously you start out as a photographer, and writing has become a big thing. Do you consider yourself a better photographer or a better writer?
I don't know if I consider myself a photographer at all anymore.
Oh, really? Well, weren't you? I mean, you're a pro at one point. Do you lose it? Do you lose that skill?
I don't know is I guess the fair answer, because I haven't been able to practice it much lately because of my eye situation. I can't, it's very challenging.
Take us back to when you were doing a lot of photography and writing, right? You were doing both. Did you feel like you were kind of better at one or the other?
Well, I've been a photographer for 50 years, and you figure that stuff out. And honestly, the type of photography I practiced, professionally, commercial advertising photography, I was very skilled at it. So I'm proud of that. And you can go to louiscahill.com. You can see examples of both fishing photography and, advertising photography. So yeah, I mean, in all fairness, I think that I'm better at that. I've always had an interest in writing, and I did actually, I went to school. I went to night school at Emory to learn to write, to write for the site, and I'm proud of my writing. I'm proud of what I do. And I get a lot of support for it. But in my core, I'm a visual artist.
Yeah. Gotcha. That makes sense. Okay. Well, let's see. I think we've touched on a little bit of, there's always a few things I leave on the table. I'm sure we'll get some people that know you well, and we might get some hate mail for whatever we left out, but maybe we'll get you on again down the line. When you have things going. The guitar thing, we're not going to dig into here, I guess, but maybe just quickly talk about the guitar. What do you build? What do you make in there? What's your style?
So I make electric guitars.
Oh, cool. Like Stratocaster sort of stuff?
So in guitars, there's like two styles of electric guitar making. There's the Fender type instruments and there's the Gibson type instruments,
okay.
And the Fender type instruments that I make are more like Telecasters,
Okay.
I'm not really a big Strat guy. But then I make a lot of the more Gibson style instruments, which if you're into guitars, you kind of know what that means. Set necks rather than bolt on necks, break angles rather than flat string planes,
Okay.
tilted back headstocks, more hollow instruments and stuff.
Oh, cool.
But I just started doing it because it was something that was on my list of I've always wanted to do. I'm the kind of person, I have to be learning something new all the time or I get really grumpy, right? So I just decided to get into it. And I made the first guitar out of some scrap lumber I had laying around. Didn't even go buy wood for it, and it turned out good. I thought it was going to be a disaster, but it turned out nice. And so I made a second one. I actually bought some nice wood for it. And I thought, well, I need to get a case for this. So I took it to the shop to find a case that would fit it. And the guys at the shop freaked out about it. And I left with an order. So it was another one of those things I backed into. I have a shop called Earth Shaking Music here in Atlanta that sells my instruments. And I've done some custom stuff through them, but I also build instruments and just put them in the store for sale. And it's been awesome because I love doing it and it keeps me busy. And if you're interested in that and want to see it, you can go on Instagram and look up the Telecaster Diaries. That's my Instagram feed, at the Telecaster Diaries. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, I'll check that out. I'll put a link into that as well. So, okay. And then, and just quickly, so music wise, just give us, what's your favorite band or type of music?
I'm a little all over the place. To be honest with you, I love like Mississippi Hill Country blues.
Oh, wow.
People like Mississippi Fred McDowell, R.L. Burnside, those are the kind of things that's really in my soul, as a Southerner, that's in there.
Is that old school stuff?
Yeah. It's very old. I mean, running from like, as far back as the 1930s up through the 1960s.
Oh, wow. Could you go online and find a video or some sort of audio with that style?
Absolutely. Go
Yeah.
on YouTube and do a search for Mississippi Fred McDowell, and
Okay.
you'll be blown away. The style. So the style of Mississippi Hill Country blues it's not a chord progression like a normal song or like a normal blues song. There's only one chord, right? It never changes. It never goes like 1 4 5, right? It's just one, right? But it focuses on what they call the hypnotic groove, right? They create these beautiful, complex circular rhythms that just like whip you into a trance. Like a guy who does that currently would be Otis Taylor. Like you go look up Otis Taylor, he's just amazing. He calls it trance blues, but it's hill country blues. That's what it is. And if you go on YouTube, look up Mississippi Fred McDowell, and there's a video of him playing a song called "Shake 'Em On Down," and you watch this guy, and unlike rock guitarists who their left hand's all over the neck doing all this crazy stuff, right? It looks like his left hand is doing nothing.
No kidding.
It's just kind of hovering. He wears a little short slide on his pinky that he plays the bottom strings with, and and he's doing that thing where he's playing bass with his thumb, and playing melody with his fingers, and the way he shifts through rhythms are super, super complicated and just amazing. And when I started playing guitar, and I took some guitar lessons, and I went to, I had a guitar teacher who was a jazz guy, really technical, good guitar player. And I told him, I want to learn how to play this song. And he's like, oh, that's not complicated. You can play that. And he's like, hey, let's see. And he sits down and starts messing with it. And 30 minutes later, he goes, I have no idea how he does that.
There you go.
It's just like magic.
That's cool. Yeah, Louis, just wanted to thank you for coming on and providing all the information, and the resource, Gink and Gasoline, over the years has been awesome. And I'm excited to see what you guys have going, especially the podcast and everything new. So there you go. If you want to find all the show notes with all the links we covered, go to wetflyswing.com/206. Head over to Clubhouse. There's a new Clubhouse app that's out there, and we are just testing out some new live podcasting. So if you want to join, send me a DM or message, and I can get you an invite. Or you just go to Clubhouse, wetflyswing.com/clubhouse, and you can check out the newest thing we have coming up here. So no problem if you missed this, by the way. These episodes that we do live, we actually post them on the podcast later. But it is a chance to raise your hand and come up on stage and talk to the guests in person, which is a really cool thing. So thanks again for checking out the show today. I'm looking forward to catching up with you soon. I hope maybe see you online or on the river.
Thanks for listening to the Wet Fly Swing Fly Fishing Show. For notes and links from this episode, visit wetflyswing.com.